My name is Ryan Orner. I lead an amazing team of CSMs at HubSpot, and I help support HubSpot's AI and enablement projects. I'm excited to host today's customer panel, which is all about real-world AI adoption, how companies are using HubSpot's agents to scale conversations, improve efficiencies, and drive measurable results. If you're looking to better understand HubSpot's AI tools and explore how agents actually work inside a CRM, or just figure out how your team can be more efficient with AI, you're definitely in the right session. Today, I'm joined by HubSpot customer Andrea Martin, and you're going to hear exactly how her company, Wallet, has done it. You'll hear about their challenges, how they implemented AI, and then ultimately what happened. So, Andrea, are you there?
I'm here. Hi,
Okay.
Ryan.
Thanks again so much for joining. Andrea, I'd love to start off with some introductions. If you could introduce yourself, and for those who might not know anything about Wallet, if you could share what your company does and who you serve.
Yeah, so my name is Andrea Martin. I am a product manager at Wallet. Wallet is a fintech company who serves the gig economy, and we are primarily on mobile. So think like rideshare drivers, delivery workers, people whose income fluctuates. It's not stable week to week or predictable by their paycheck week over week. We do mobile first cash advances to our clients who are in need of spotting throughout the week based on that predictable income. And then our customers are primarily in the Latina-based community and primarily Spanish speaking.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that summary. We obviously talked before this and you shared your story, and I'm so excited to share a lot of what you shared with me ultimately with this audience. And like many great products that we ultimately get to market, they start with a challenge. So let's rewind just a little bit and let's dig into that challenge that you were facing. So before you implemented Customer Agent, and just to be clear with the audience, we're very much going to talk about Customer Agent. But before you implemented Customer Agent, what challenge were you trying to solve?
The ultimate problem that we were trying to solve when we were going down the journey of looking at what AI tools could be beneficial to us was the chat conversations that our team was experiencing internally. We had a fairly small chat team of 5 people, and while that might be like small compared to like a Fortune 500 company, that's also pretty big compared to the number of clients that we have. We were having a ton of chats come in on the daily, and we weren't able to field all of those chats internally through our app. Ultimately, we also had to shut down our chat at the end of the day when our specialists would go home, and so we weren't a 24/7 chat either.
Okay. And based off of the customers that you serve, was there any other components that were really important to you when it came to solving the challenge?
Yes, we had a lot of back and forth with clients that we felt like could be handled by AI, doing some verification of the client, things that were taking up time within those chats that we didn't necessarily need to put on a person internally. We could do that with AI. And then the challenge that we were trying to solve was ultimately that it wasn't sustainable either.
Okay. So essentially what I'm hearing is you needed an AI-powered, mobile-friendly chat solution that you could scale to your customer base, but do it really efficiently. And you were obviously already a HubSpot customer, but initially from when we were talking, you mentioned you didn't realize that HubSpot could be a solution for what you were looking for to solve this challenge. Spoiler here, for anyone who attends Inbound, there's a really great Inbound connection that's about to be shared. But if you could talk through a little bit about that discovery process and ultimately how and when you realized that HubSpot could be a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were deep in our analysis with different vendors that we could do AI chatting with our clients through. We had a team of people. We were about to sign a contract with a very prominent leader in the AI chat space, and we had a team attend Inbound 2025. They ultimately came back and they scheduled a meeting with me, and they were like, wait, HubSpot can actually do mobile. So the issue that we were facing prior to that was not a lot of people did mobile chat at the time. They primarily did website chat. And while that's great, and like kudos to everyone who does that, we are primarily mobile based. And so we had to find someone who could support that. We had a few colleagues, like I said, come back from Inbound last year, and they said, Andrea, HubSpot can actually support mobile now. And so we need to take a look at this, because if we do it somewhere else, we're kind of getting into the problem space of like the knowledge base being external. A lot of Our internal focus is narrowing down some of the tools that we're using internally, not sending specialists to different tools. And so like we think this would be a great option to look at HubSpot for this.
Yeah, massive shout out to our inbound team and everything that goes into putting on that event. Last year, obviously in San Francisco, we're transitioning back to Boston, likely for the next couple of years. So if you haven't attended, great opportunity to do so. And you heard it right from Andrea, how that impacted her team and ultimately the decision that they made here. So once you realized that HubSpot could do this, your team came back from inbound, they shared this great news, they're super excited. At the time, still evaluating under other vendors. What was it that ultimately made HubSpot Customer Agent the clear choice?
We realized from inbound specifically that we could do more. So we could do workflows internally. We could set up assistants to answer questions. We could set up agents to do things for us that we weren't doing previously. And then also just the, like I talked about, the need to like export that knowledge base externally, house it in two different places because we currently house it in HubSpot, and then ultimately maintain that in two different places, which was a big sticking point for us. We were limited on resources, and so we wanted to be able to do that in one single location. And then there's ultimately the issue of like adding on different tools is like we're paying for two different tools, but we were paying for HubSpot originally. So that's kind of where we landed.
Yeah, and we when we talk to customers, and I made it a like a really big goal of mine in 2026 to talk to more customers about challenges like this. We often hear the classic case of like we want to reduce our tech stack, right? We want to have a native CRM integration with a lot of the tools that we're using. We don't want to have these fragmented systems, and we don't want to pay for multiple things that are doing the same thing essentially at once. And so I think your use case here just lines up with all of those so well. How important was it for you that the AI agents live directly inside of your CRM instead of more of a like bolt-on solution?
Just having access to the data, there's like the different connections that can be made from HubSpot to external vendors, and like the connections can be webhooked or API calls. But the fact that we house our information about each client internally in HubSpot today, and then the assistant being able to, excuse me, the agent being able to like verify their email address, verify the stage in our process in which they are, and then natively give information to them based on we call them stages internally in the process that they're moving through, or if they have questions. Our agent was able to, we did a POC with another vendor, and the question and answer quality was night and day between the two different because all of our information lives in HubSpot related to those clients or customers.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And certainly like a point of difference that your team recognized and where it sounds like what was one of the driving forces to bring HubSpot on and specifically Customer Agent. So let's talk about the implementation and adoption, right? Because AI adoption can feel really intimidating to a lot of teams. We often hear that teams don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the technical expertise. They're pretty like early in their like AI adoption phase across the board. But what was implementation like for you and for your team?
From my perspective, it went pretty smoothly. It went a lot smoother than I had anticipated. Sometimes I think that it can take like multiple sprints to get it out and to test it, but we were up and running in less than a week with a POC internally on how we were going to do this. And so I found it super easy, but there's always some resistance internally to like making this live, doing the testing, and ultimately like the widget isn't just on our website, it's in our mobile app. And so being able to configure that internally, I would say the weight fell on being able to configure it with our knowledge base more than it was on the tech side. So like the distinction there is the tech team had it from day one. Everything that came after that was more laborious than even the tech side.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it was a pretty light lift for your team, but I think one thing that often goes overlooked in these situations, especially if there's like a big AI transformation happening at a company, is the human side, right? I mean, there are still real concerns that AI is going to take our jobs, right? And so how did your team react to this? And was there any resistance that you faced when it came to AI handling these conversations?
I would love to agree with you and say yes, but you've seen our numbers at our highest. We hit our highest volume last week with internal chats at 3,200 chats, and so 3,000 chats is unmanageable for 5 people on a week-to-week basis. And so they were really, really happy, and they continue to bring us use cases where we can train our internal agent to be able to handle more of those conversations. So like I said, any sort of like email verification that the agent can do, any of the mundane tasks or the simple question and answer back and forth that our agent is able to handle, they want it to be able to handle that because they don't have time to answer 3,000 chats on their team weekly as it is. So they're super excited about it. I agree with you. Some people are not. I think there's, like we've talked about this entire forum, the distinction between like what it's doing and what it needs to have human interaction behind is still super important and worth validating their feelings on.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And you started to share a data point there, which actually is a really nice transition for me to get into some of the results and the ROI that you've seen, right? Because I think a really big push for us as a company, HubSpot that is in 2026, is like, it's not about just like launching all these new products and features, right? It's about the results, getting results for our customers. And so I did a little digging. I like the stat that you threw out there, but I did a little digging into your results to prep for this. And I want to share a few other results with the audience. So since January 1st of this year, Customer Agent has handled over 18,000 conversations for Wallet. That's about 277 chats per day, or nearly 2,000 per week. And as Andrea just said, they hit a new high, which is probably not included in the data that I pulled earlier. I just want to let that sink in for a minute. Those are really, really large numbers. What does that volume mean for your business? How has that helped?
Yeah, our agents that are incoming chats can focus on the people who actually need help. And so they're able to offload a lot of the, like I have alluded to a couple times, initial like validation of who they're speaking with. Some of those initial conversations, like, hey, where am I at in the process? The agent's got it. We don't need to handle those internally, but it's a little bit more of the complicated conversations. And because we're able to operate now, we're able to answer those conversations around the clock. And so it's no longer 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever our hours may be that we're able to chat with people, but it's around the clock, and we're able to help the people who really need help so that they're not sitting on the bench waiting for someone to come answer the questions that they might have. And then also, we internally have made the decision to expand hours in different places based on the data that we have back. And so, like, if we see a lot of chats at a specific time of the day, we're able to field those hours better internally as well.
Awesome. So you're seeing efficiency gains, you're seeing a lot of time saved, you're able to scale significantly because as you mentioned before, reps would just not be able to handle, that volume of chats as they're coming in. Let's talk a little bit about just the cost savings, right? Or cost efficiency. Is that something that you've been able to dig into it a little bit? And how has that impacted your business in terms of cost efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, because our clients are on their phones, we work with people who receive their paycheck through an app, through a mobile friendly environment in the beginning. We're able to get them answers more quickly and allow them to move on with their day. So they're no longer waiting for us. They're no longer having to call us. They're able to get the answer and move on. Therefore, getting back to what drives their business, which is being on their phone, picking up people, picking up food, delivering it, working on the app the way that they intended when they started their day, not chatting with us.
Awesome. Seems like a win-win on both sides. Andrea, I have two more questions for you. So I'd love to hear about what's next, right? Like you mentioned before, you've decided to scale this to other parts of the business based off the data. Are there any other either areas of the business that you plan to scale this to or other, I would say like agents within HubSpot that you plan to scale?
Yeah, we are doing an internal assessment actually this week to determine which agents and assistants we're able to implement and how we're going to scale that internally. Taking some of the work off of all of our teams internally, collections teams, sales teams, everyone, and turning some of the mundane tasks into any decision that can be made by AI, relatively speaking, can just be turned into an assistant, an agent, and able to be handled and wiped off of their plate and give them access to the most valuable thing that they're needed for, which is speaking to our clients. So we're doing that analysis this week. We're planning to launch in the next few weeks and then turn around data and show our executive team how this worked.
Okay, that's really exciting stuff. You mentioned collections, that's probably a pain point for a lot of companies. My hope is that you're able to scale it to collections with the use of Breeze Assistant to be able to, get those collections agents the knowledge that they need before they're having those conversations, to use the customer agent to focus on, the highest priority collections cases. And hopefully between the two, you're able to scale it. But certainly let us know if you need any additional support with those.
That's the plan.
All right. All right. I have one more question for you. So, if you could give one piece of advice to companies who are considering AI-powered customer agents, especially teams who feel a little unsure, what would you tell them?
I think the first thing would be the analysis, like we did, knowing your volumes before you go in. We knew that we were up against potentially 3,000 chats a week. I think we're growing beyond that, even when we didn't expect to beat that, and now we are, which is really exciting for us. And then the the main thing that we've been talking about today, and a huge sticking point, is training your knowledge base. And so making sure that you have people available to train that knowledge base and to give Breeze the information that it needs in order to make it successful was one thing that we found was super, super important, to make sure that you have value in it at the end of the day. Because if we talked about garbage in and garbage out previously in the session today, and that's the same for this agent that's going to be working with your clients.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I guess just to wrap it up, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to this group today. Really appreciate all of your insights. Ultimately, I think the main takeaways for me were you didn't have to buy additional software. You were able to go with an existing platform where all of your data was already in, a platform that you trusted. And through that trust, in just over a few months, you were able to automate over 18,000 conversations. And now you're scaling that to other revenue impacted teams like your collections teams.
Yep.
And so I think like as I step back, to me, like that's what modern customer engagement is going to look like moving forward. And I think this is a great example of it. So thank you again. Hopefully everyone got a lot out of this, and feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any questions.